not too far from outside of Lakefield. I was an child. That wanted some friends to play with and whatnot. But I had pets. I had cats and I had dogs and kittens and calves and a pet lamb. And I also spent time with my dad. My mother was one of these people who, and she had to get on. So she usually sent me off to my dad. He was great. He was my teacher. I remember one time, I think he was doing plowing or something with a drill, and I heard a bird. I said, and he said, "That's a bird." "Well, what kind of a bird?" "Well, just listen to it, and you can see if it is." "How will I find out?" "Listen, where the sound is coming." "Well, it's from up there. It's from that tree." "Yeah." "Well, what's up there?" "Well, that's where a bird lives." "What kind of bird is it?" "It's a bluebird." "Jay." "How will I know it's a jay?" "How do you know that?" "Well, you know by the this one on. This is how he taught. He would just do one little thing, and he was a teacher. Anyway, back on to the time on the farm and with the pets. It came when I got to be 6. School. I thought, oh, what's school? What's that all about? Because I was a child, there were no other young children around where I lived. So, well, 3 miles to walk, and I was only 5, just coming up 6. And I'd have to walk by myself. So they decided the best thing to do with me was send me into Lakefield here to stay with my mother's twin sister and her mother. So I stayed with them for 5 years while I went to school here. Aunt Josie was one of the most memorable people that I ever had in my life. I loved her dearly because she was always teaching me things, always happy, always laughing, always lots of fun. And she didn't have a lot to be happy about, I tell you, but she made it go. She said to me one time, it was in the winter, and she said that, first of all, when I came here, she said, "Now we're going to go for a walk in the evening." So we walked, we'd go in one part of the village tonight, and another part tomorrow night, and so on. And she could tell me who lived in this house, and who lived in that house, and what they did, and all about them. And I found this fascinating, because living on a farm, you don't see too many people. And that went on for the 5 years I lived with her and Grandma. I remember one winter, she's always finding things for me to do too. One winter she said to me, there was a garden at the back and there was a little hollow in it. Water had gathered there and froze. And Aunt Josie said to me, "You know, if you had a pair of skates, you could skate on that." And I thought, what's a pair of skates? I had no idea what you're talking about. But anyway, she canvassed the neighborhood. She found a pair of skates. These were the old tie-on ones that you tied over your boots. So I got onto this, got the skates onto me, and then I got in the ice and then proceeded to fall down. So she said, "Well, what you need a chair." So she brought a chair out from the summer kitchen, and I pushed that chair around, and I learned to skate. But that was Aunt Josie. She was always thinking of things for me to do, and always happy about things. Very wonderful lady. Had the greatest effect on me, I think, of anybody I ever had anything to do with. Her and my dad. But anyway, finally, I was there for 5 years with them, and then I they had to move. Their house, it was bad times then, it was the early 30s, and they lost their house. So they had to move someplace else. And my aunt and my grandmother. So I couldn't stay there and go to school. So I thought, well, I'll go home. I can probably walk now. Now I can walk 3 miles in the morning and 3 miles at night. Surely I'm 11 years old. So I tried that for a while and did pretty well with it. And I went to a little country school, number 7 Smith. And this is where Sheila and Roy live now. So we have a little connection there, because I went to school in that little place where they had their house. And Roy, when I became a teacher, the first school I had was at Young's Point, and I didn't teach him, but he was in the senior room and I was in the junior room. So these little communities stay connected, and it's good that they do. So came home, and I thought, well, I have 3 miles to walk every morning, 3 miles to walk at night. Don't know if I can do that or not. We had a teacher from September till Christmas, and then she left and she went someplace else. But who came to teach at Christmas but Ivan Medill from Lakefield here? He was a teacher. And he came out, and he found out that I lived on the 11th there. So instead of going around by Selwyn, he would come up the back road, pick me up. So I only had to walk up to the top of the hill. So that was a break for me too. And he was there for 2 years, and then he left, and we had another teacher. In the little country schools then, we had 10 grades, because if you wanted to, a lot of people might have wanted to go to high school, but they couldn't afford to go into town and stay someplace. So they did let them have grade 9 and 10 in their little country school. And I think we had a couple of the Northern girls were grade 9 and 10, and somebody else was another grade 9, I think, Isabel Fitzgerald, Rolling Fitzgerald. Anyway, we had another fellow come, Mr. Seymour, and he also was a very good teacher. And not only did he teach us well, but he brought his workbench with him, and we learned to make things. We learned, to make, I think we made birdhouses and we made something else. A little extracurricular work there, but it was all fun and it was all good. And he also was the first, I became very interested in reading when I went back home to the little school. And I would take a book and read on the way home. You know, the people used to say, there's that crazy kid from the 11th. She's reading that book again. She's in and out of the ditches. But I enjoyed my book and I didn't care. But anyway, Mr. Seymour, he was quite impressed with what I read and what I wrote. And he said to me, you know, I remember I kept that for a long time. I don't know where it went, but I can't find it. He wrote a little thing on one of my report cards. Keep up the reading and keep up the writing. Someday you will be a famous author. Sure I will. Cows will fly. I'm not a famous author, but I am an author. But no, I got a lot of encouragement from the people around me, from the teachers I had, most of them. I had a few that didn't encourage me too much. But that was the beginning of my career, I guess, as a journalist. From there on, I finally finished high school. Now, that wasn't something that everybody did in those days. That's why they had grade 9 and 10 in the little elementary schools, because you might get a couple of years there and then decide to go on or not. But anyway, I went into Lakefield again, and this time I finally ended up with Whipple McCracken. I stayed at McCracken's, and that was the greatest place anybody ever could live, because she had that house full, but everybody was happy. We had a lovely, lovely time there. She was just wonderful. She loved people. and I learned so much from her. And so I spent 5 years in high school, did fairly well. Another one that impressed me when I was in high school was Mr. Harvey. He was the principal when I went there. Big, tall man. And the only word I could use to describe him was gray. His face was gray, his hair was gray, and he wore gray suits. And he said to me one day, he came along, he used to walk down the aisles, and I'd finished my work and I was reading. And he came up and he said, "What are you reading?" Scared the daylights out of me. And I jumped up, I said, "Lorna Doone, sir." And he said, "Tell me about it." And so I started explaining what the book was about. And he said, Do you like reading?" I said, "Oh, yes, I do." I didn't know whether I should say yes or, well, no, not really. But I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Keep that up. That's the best education you can get." And I never forgot that. But he was always interested in what I was doing. I liked it. So I finished high school. I did 10 grade 13 subjects. Because I didn't want to take Latin. I wanted to take Latin. I didn't really want to take, I don't know what else, history. I thought, well, I've had all the history I need, but I do like Latin. It'll be easy for me. So I did 10 grade 13 subjects. And finally then, the next year I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And everybody's saying, well, what are you going to do? And my mother kept saying, "I think it would be nice if you'd be a teacher." No, I don't think I want to do that at all. And I'm thinking of everything else, maybe I could go work in a store, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. But finally she won out, and I went to teachers college. And I learned to teach. And I thought, well, that's not bad at all. I know how to learn, and now I'm learning how to teach. And I enjoyed my year at teachers college. I enjoyed living with my Aunt Helen and her 5 kids. When you're an only child, you get a chance to live with 5 other kids. Man! But it was good. And then I thought, well, I don't know where I'm going to teach. That's the next thing. And where did I end up? Young's Point. Number 8 Smith. 3 miles again from where I lived. And my father bought me my first bicycle so that I could ride to school. And for the nice months in the fall, that's what I did. I rode my bicycle. And then the winter came and I thought, I can't ride a bike, what am I going to do now? But I got to stay with a lovely lady, Mrs. Young, and her sister. They lived down the little lane behind the store there, I forget what you call it. But she was lovely, and I stayed there from Monday to Thursday, or Friday. Then I went home. And her daughter, who was working in Peterborough, she came home Friday and stayed until Sunday night. So it's funny because we're both living in the same seniors' home now. And when I went in, somebody said, "This is Marion O'Toole," and I said, "Oh yeah, I know her, we shared a bed." I had it Monday to Thursday, she had it Friday to Sunday. And she's still lots of fun. Anyway, I taught at Young's Point for 5 years, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Or most minutes of it. There were a few I didn't enjoy. But most of it was, the kids were great. I just loved them all. And the funny thing was, my mother, who had always been such a busy person and always had to do work and couldn't have time to do this and couldn't have time to do that, she became so interested in these kids that she wanted to know all about them. She used to go to the hockey games and watch them, or if they were playing ball or something. If they came to pick me up or something, she'd come, "Now who's that? And who's this? And who's that?" And I remember at Christmas I decided I'll get them all a little gift of some kind. I think it was 28 or something in my room. And I thought, well, I guess I could get them a coloring book, maybe, and some crayons or something. "Oh, here, let me wrap those," she says. I thought, What's got into you? You never bothered with children before because she was too busy. She was working all the time. She didn't work so hard. So she got to wrap their gifts, and when we took them to the Christmas concert, which was the big event of the year, she's right, now who is that? That's the one I wrapped up this for. Oh yes, okay. She had to find that out. First time she was really interested in children. I was at Young's Point for 5 years, and then I got thinking, well, I'm going to be part of the furniture if I stay here any longer. Maybe I should do something else. And then I see what I did. Oh yes, then I went off to another school, up at Bay Ridges, near Toronto. And that was all right, but it wasn't the same. So I only stayed there 2 years. Then I went to CGE. It was a funny thing because CGE had Rosie Wong was in the shattergraph part of the CGE. She used to shattergraph the tools and everything that came in. She was a Lakefield girl, a Chinese lady that lived in the school here. And I knew her, so I thought, oh, maybe she was getting married, so I thought, well, maybe I'll see what kind of a job she has. Maybe I could do that. So I did. I got into the CGE in August, and it was fine. The job was okay. I could do it, and I liked the people I worked with. And I thought, oh my God, you walk into the building, then you walk into the tool room, then you walk into the inspection. The world could end and you'd never know. I can't live like this. I'm too clustered in here, no. So I only stayed till February. And at that point in time, there was a strike looming. And I thought, well, I really don't think this is the job for me. So maybe if I leave now, Joe Rogers did shadowgraphing out in the tool room, the first phase of it. And I thought, he's got a wife and family, so if I leave now, they'll keep him on. And I can go off and do something else. Now, I don't know if they kept him on or not. I hope they did. But, so I went on from there. And then I went, where did I go? Oh, and I came back to Peterborough then, and I taught at St. Alphonsus for a year until St. Pius was built. We were building a new school. And so Kay Young, Innismore Youngs, she and I taught the St. Pius, the ones that would be St. Pius kids in St. Alphonsus. And then we moved to the new school the following year, and I was there for 4 more years. And it was lovely. My taught with Loretta Kavanaugh, Loretta Walsh, Kay Fitzgerald, Margie O'Keefe, 4 of us in a little 4-room school there. It was lovely. But there again, I'm getting itchy feet again. It's time I moved on. And I said to Loretta, I said, I think I'm going to move. And she said, well, Mary, you'll be sorry to see you go. Are you sure you want to go? I said, I think so. I'm going to move somewhere else now, do something else. That was in May, I think, early June. Loretta was dead by September. She had cancer and it just moved so fast. Well, then I didn't know whether I should stay or go or what I should do. But I went. And I went to my cousin and some of her friends had just graduated from Teachers College the year before, and they were teaching in Oshawa, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go up there. Maybe that'll be different. So I went there. There was nothing in Oshawa, but I got hired at St. Teresa's in Whitby. It was a nice little school, went up to grade 6, 3 rooms, and I had 17 different nationalities in that little school. Because it was after the war, and people were moving, coming here. And I remember thinking, wow, the kids were fun. But then I decided to have an open house one time, and I said, no. I sent notes home for their parents, come to the open house, see what your children are doing, and all this kind of thing. And nobody came. Not too many came.
Can you speak louder, Mary?
I can, I think.
Closer.
I'll do a hoot and a holler here. Anyway, I decided, well, what'll I do? So I said to some of the grade 6 girls, how come your parents didn't come for open house? Weren't they interested in seeing your work? And she said, well, my parents don't speak English and they don't understand English. And I thought, well, dummy me. I said, we'll do this again next month. Only you people will come with your parents and you show them your work and you tell them so that they can understand. So that got through that. And I thought, I don't know why I didn't think of that. But naturally the work would come. So I thought, well, that's good. Well, that started the ball rolling. It didn't matter what I wanted. All I had to do was mention to the kids, I'd like to do this, and there was 2 or 3 parents right there to do whatever I needed. We decided we'd have a rink. Whitby never gets cold enough to have a rink, but for some reason, that was a different winter. And it was cold, and things were freezing, and I thought, maybe we could do a little rink just in the side yard, like we used to do at Jones Point. And so I said, talked to Ben Mitchell, the business administrator. Well, I don't think, Mary, you could do that. And I said, why? Well, I don't think we could afford that. What do you have to afford? Well, you need boards. Why do you need boards? You're not going to skate on boards. Well, you need boards to put around it. I said, so they can fall into them and hurt themselves? Well, you always have to have boards around a rink. Oh, I said, no. I've skated on a lot of rinks with no boards. So anyway, I said, I think we'll do it. The parents said, we'll bring our cars up and we'll flatten down the snow for you and we'll do the first flood and anything you want after that, let us know. These are the people that most of them didn't speak English, so they're talking through their children. But they did that, and we had a rink, and they took turns and had a staggered lunch hour so that there was some of the older ones with some of the little ones outside, and then the rest reading, and then another shift were there. But it was lots of fun. And then we decided one time we should go someplace. I mean, we can learn something other than in the classroom. So we decided, I said, the museum's only in Toronto. If we wrote to the museum, I'm sure that I forget what we were studying then, but they were interested in it. And I said, well, we can go to the museum and we can see the displays. And they'll give you some information and tell you to do a talk to you and everything. So that was fine. Back I go to my friend Mitchell. Oh, Mary, you can't. Well, I don't know how you're going to do that. I said, we can rent a bus. I'll rent the bus if you want. The kids can pay 10 cents or something for the parents if they want. You're going to need chaperones. Why do I need chaperones? You can't take children on a bus without chaperones. I said, they're sitting in seats. What do they need chaperones for? Well, I think, I don't think you should do that. Well, I said, I'm going to talk to the parents and see what they think. Talk to the parents, and they said, no, if you feel that they can handle this, fine. And they said, we think it would be a good thing, because they'll learn a lot more than they would in the classroom. There's more exhibits. So we did. We went to Toronto. We went to the museum. But before we got there, when this came up, I said, okay, now you people are going to do the work here. I'm going to teach you how to write a business letter. This is grade 5 and 6. What's a business letter? Well, I said, that's what you write if you're writing to a company and you want something, them to send you something, or they want to do something for you, whatever. So I said, I'll teach you how to write a business letter. And then everybody will write a business letter. And then the ones that want to can do another copy and will send it. And they the answer can come back to whoever wrote it or whoever sent it. So two of my grade 6 girls decided they could do that. And I said, well, okay, I've got a portable typewriter here. If you think you can type it. They did that too. We got the letter off, got a lovely letter back from the museum telling them all the things they could see. They could have a guided tour of whatever it was they asked for. And then there would be someone to help them with other things. And in spite of Ben, we didn't tell him the day we were going. We got the bus, we got to Toronto, nobody got killed, and they all learned a lot, and it was fun. Then there was an election in the community there, and I thought, these kids are old enough, they should learn something about what this election. In fact, one of the kids said to me, "What's an election?" That was the trigger. And I said, well, we'll talk about an election. I think it's time you learn about things like that. And we learned all about government, how it came about, and all the rest of it, just basic stuff. And I said, read the newspapers, get the newspapers and look and see what this election's all about. And bring me back little clippings here and there, so they did. And then we decided we would have an election. So we had candidates and everything, and we had people who were what do you call them? Scrutineers. We had a list of voters and all the rest of it. They learned the whole thing in sort of after hours type thing when they finished something. They were dying to get work finished so they could get all this extra stuff. But we did a lot of that kind of thing. And then we were going to have a Christmas concert because we always had one down here. And I thought, well, what are we going to do for a stage? Well, I asked if there were a lot of apple orchards around. Somebody said, why don't you get apple boxes? And you can then put something on top of them. I thought, okay, maybe we could do that, but apple boxes are going to be empty and they jiggle. You don't want people falling off the stage, so. Or Ben will be upset again. Anyway, I said, well, I don't know. So someone said to me, finally, they said, why don't you use bales of hay? And I thought, well, where am I going to get bales of hay? And this little fellow said, oh, my dad knows where he's got lots of hay, and he's got a truck, and he'll bring it to you, which he did. This was a Polish man. He had hay, and he had trucks, and he got them delivered and got it set up. And then so I said, now we need something over the top of it, boards or something. Nobody had any boards. And then this one lad said to me, well, my dad got mad one night and he tore our rec room apart because he didn't like it. And he said he'd fix it, but it's never been fixed. But he said there's a lot of boards there. And I said, well, do you think he'd mind if we borrowed them for a while? I don't know, he said. Sometimes he's in good humor and sometimes he isn't. Well, I said, you pick a time he's in good humor and see if you'll let us have him. He even brought them up to the school for me. And he said, you know, I've never been at this school. And I said, well, you'll have to come back then to get your boards. So, but he was pleased. And I said, you going to come to our concert? Well, I've never done that. And I said, well, can't do it any sooner, can you? So he came, and he was so proud of his two boys because they had a part in plays and things. And didn't know they could do that. I said, maybe you should come more often. So I said, we also have open house every once in a while that you can come and see their work. But it was fun. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed St. Teresa's. It was a wonderful school. And they learned all those different things. And there was one fellow, Paul Ferguson, and if he hasn't got into politics, I don't know where he is now, but he must be in politics someplace, because he ate and drank politics. He knew everything that was going on. But it was lots of fun. And at the last weekend of the school year, my grade 6s would be going over to grade 7 the following year, and I wouldn't have them anymore. And there was about 12 of them, I guess. And I said, well, you know, they wanted to know where I lived. What do I do for the summer? And I said, oh, I go home to my parents' farm. where's that? So I thought, well, maybe we should take you down there and show you. So I got another parent to drive, and we picked up the kids on a Sunday, and we drove to Peterborough. We saw the lift locks, we saw the city, all the rest of the city, pointed out anything, the canoe music place and everything. And then we went to Bridge North, and we saw the causeway, and there's still a part of the old floating bridge there. And I told them about how the bridge floated on the water, and the cars drove over it, and the water just splashing up on the cars. Well, they thought that was wonderful. Then we went to see a beaver dam on my dad's farm. And then we went to my parents' place, and my mother had made a big meal for them. So they helped her get the table set, they helped her with the dishes, and they helped her with everything. And I said that, she said, oh, they'll only be in my way. I said, no, they won't, and you just be quiet, let them do it. They need to do this. So, and they had a wonderful time. And that was the last of that break. The next year, when we took the bus trip, we had the grade 6s and grade 5s, but the grade 6s that had gone over to the bigger school for grade 7, they wanted to come again too on the bus. So now we had too many. But it was fun, but everything was fun, and we made it fun. We had little parties in the way, well, I think we tapped trees someplace along the way too, and then we made maple syrup, and they put it in the snow and whatnot. But we learned so many things, and they were such wonderful people. The parents, the kids, the whole community was terrific. Anyway, that was about as far as I could go, so then I decided to come home and get married. And have some kids of my own. So I had my husband was married before, and I had a stepdaughter, Rosemary, who was 11, I think. 11. And then I had twins the following year. There's one of them sitting back there. And then the year after, I had twins again. And both of them live in Peterborough. No, one lives out by Young's Point, the other one lives in Peterborough. So I had a great little life for myself. Did a lot of traveling in the summer. And then after the kids were grown, or before the kids were born, or even when they were little, I got out of teaching, because I remember thinking, well, if I have children, I'm not going to be dragging them out in the morning and taking them here and there. I'll stay home with them. But they'd still call me to supply. And I remember Bev Martin lived down the street from me, and she had 4 little girls, and they were all in school by now. And so she came up one day, and she said, she came to see the kids, because I had taught her over at Young's Point here years before. And she came to see the kids, and someone phoned, and I said, they phoned me here to supply, and I told them I'm not supplying while these kids are little. Oh, Mary, she said, go ahead. She said, I'll look after them. And I said, well, but you've got, no, she said, my last one just went to school. She's there for half a day, but the other 3 are all in school. So she said, I got nothing to do, so you go, and I'll look after you. And I thought, well, maybe I should do something like that. So I tried it out and worked out. The only problem was Bev didn't just look after the kids. She did housework. Cripes, I came home, she had done laundry, she'd done cleaning floors and everything else. But she was terrific. She said, I need something to do. So.
You also went out on Halloween night.
I did too.
Come to my house one night. Neither you nor Bev spoke for 2 hours. I wouldn't let my oldest children go to bed because I didn't know who you were.
That's right. That was an endurance test. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. A lot of fun. No, we kept pretty quiet. And neither one of us were noted for being quiet.
No, but you never spoke because I didn't know who you were.
Lakefield is a great place. It's a great little community. It's just, well, I miss it. We had to get into Peterborough, I guess, but I still miss Lakefield. But I've done a lot of things. I've done all kinds of things. Every time there was an opportunity to do something, I'd get into it. It was the first coordinator for Trent Valley Literacy, for the literacy program for people coming here to learn English and whatnot. And trained tutors for that. And then I got interested in for a whole people who, what's the name, Crossroads, when they opened Crossroads, I was one of the first workers there too. I used to go to work at midnight there, or I'd go to work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon there. If I was supplying, I'd supply from 9 till 4, and then I'd go there from 4 to midnight. This was when the kids were older, getting off on their own. And I did a lot of different things like that because I was always interested in learning how to do things and try something new. And then I finally got a book written. I was looking at that river from the time I went in there to stay with Aunt Josie. And it always fascinated me because she wouldn't let me go near it. She was afraid I'd drown. And I thought, well, I'm going to get to that river. I'm going to see more of it. And I finally got enough, I saw enough of it and got interested in it again, and that's why I wrote my book, Reflections, which is the river story of Lakefield, from beginning to end. I don't know what else I've done. I guess that's about it. We moved into Peterborough in 2011, and George passed away in 2012, so I was alone. And I thought, I'm not going to live by myself. What am I going to do? So my daughter and her husband had a nephew who was up in Halliburton, and he was coming down to take the course. Now, he had 3 aunts that lived in Peterborough. I don't know why he didn't go there. Maybe Pat had something to do with that because he came to stay with me. And Patrick was with me for 4 years in the south end there. We got along famously. He took that course, and then he came back and took another course a year later. He took the police foundation and worked security. And then he just moved out last spring. And I knew he was going because he was now working out of Oshawa. And he had an hour to drive to Oshawa, 12-hour shift, an hour to drive back. Doesn't give you much of a life. So I said to him, look, if you're thinking of going, tell me when, because I'm going to sell this house. So he left in March, I guess, and I sold the house in April and moved up to Marycrest, which is a lovely place. It's the homiest place I've ever seen. It really is. Yesterday the tenants that lived there, we all got together to decorate the common room and the areas. Everybody works together. It's true. I never thought there was places like this anymore, but there are. There's few, and it is. It's just lovely. I'm happy there. Any questions?
When were you in the tool room?
I'm trying. I wrote that down because I knew I'd never remember. Because I taught 5 years at Young's Point after I finished teachers college, and then I went to, I don't know where I went from there to the tool room. Because when they had the strike, the annual strike, I can't remember. It was in the early years, I think.
I was in the tool room.
Were you?
From 65, 70.
I think I was there about 63.
Okay.
Maybe. Alf Griffin was the manager of the tool room. Walter, what was his name? Walter, somebody was little guy. Yeah, there were a lot of them. Big Bill, Bob McQuaid, was another one who was on the tool room. Oh, and Harvey Allison, you know,
Yeah.
and Harvey, yeah, he was a joker. I remember when I first started to work there, Mr. McFadden, I can't think of his first name, but he was Bill. He was the safety man. So he came over and he's trying to tell me, you gotta have better shoes than those. You can't be in a place like this with those shoes. And I looked down and I saw he had a pair of white running shoes on, and his toe was sticking out the side, and I said, think I should get some like you got? Don't be so damn smart. But no, I tried to have a good time wherever I was, and I was nosy enough that I had to learn everything I could learn. So, yes.
What years did you have your column in the paper?
Oh, that's another thing I was, I got into that too. That was back, I'm not sure, but it was back in the 50s, I'm gonna say. Under
No.
Mary's hat?
No, probably.
Under
the
Mary's, that was later than that.
Yeah, 70, late.
Yeah.
70s, yes, that's right.
Late
It would
70s,
be.
early 80s.
Yes, it would be
Yeah.
70s, yeah, I guess so, yeah, under Mary's hat.
That was more writing.
Oh, yeah, I found it, I wrote for everything. If somebody wanted a speech, I'd write it, if somebody wanted me to talk about something, I'd talk about it. I enjoyed that. But that's, I guess, my grade 8 teacher knew what he was talking about. And I still enjoy it, but my eyes are starting to give me trouble now, and I can't write too long. I've got another book that I'm
Can't
reading.
hear you back here.
Oh, I'm way back here. Just, no, I have another book that I'm writing. It's a little tiny one, just a short one. But it should be out in the middle of December, I guess. But I'm going to launch it at the place where I live, I think. Because they're so curious about these books. I guess I better launch one there. But it'll be available at Happenstance too, so. It's just a short little one, maybe about 7 or 8 little pieces. I enjoyed, I usually start every item with a poem of some kind, and then go on from there and maybe put a picture if I can, a sketch. I'm a much better writer than I am a sketcher though. I think that's what's happened to my eyes. Too much sketching. But anyway, I've enjoyed it. It's been a ball. And thank you for having me. I must say there were 2 people too. They're both girls from North Smith, and they were born in North Smith. One was Whipple McCracken, who was Whipple Fairburn, and she lived up on the 12th line there somewhere. And the other one was Pearl Elliott, who was Pearl Sanderson, who also came from the 12th line. And then there was me from the 11th, and we were really close friends, all of us. They were great people. They were all the same kind of people. Whatever they could do, they.
Whereabouts on the 11th line, what was your farm?
My uncle had a farm on the, the road that comes down from the 12th line. Okay, my uncle had the first, my grandfather had 400 acres there. Uncle Joe had.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Where you were.
We were on.
The 11th is the last road, or the end of the young point road.
Yes,
Yeah.
it goes over to the Kids Pit, and then it goes off up the hills. Yeah.
McCracken to speak, are they anything to do with McCracken's Landing?
Oh, they're all related, yeah. Yeah, Hendrick was one of the dumber McCrackens. It came from dumber. It was dumb, it means it came from dumber. I don't know why they ever named the township Dumber.
Lord Dummer, Lord and Lady Dummer.
I guess. They're the ones that are responsible for all this insults.
And they named the township after.
I guess they did.
You can't convince the people that bought on Dummer Lake.
No.
So they changed it back to White Lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, it's-
Yeah, they did. It's known as White Lake again now.
really?
Oh, yeah, the new people.
The new people. New people will do things like
They didn't
that.
like to tell their friends they lived on Dummer Lake. They say Lord Dummer. Yes.
I bet they got rid of the last Oh dear. Well, thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Thank you very much.
Actually, we used to have an expression going along with dumber, go in Durrell and come out dumber. I believe Mary's got a few copies of her book for sale
Oh, I
today.
do, yeah.
I've read it, and it was from my perspective, it was a fascinating read. To tell the story of Lakefield from the perspective of the spirit of the river was fascinating, because my ancestors spent many years on the steamboats around Lakefield and boat builders. My father and I spent hours and hours on Ketchiwanuka Lake fishing for muskies, and it was very much a trip back for me reading Mary Dutchuk. And to paraphrase an excerpt from her book, many people have come to Lakefield, lived, raised their families. Some have stayed and some have moved away, but everyone has been enriched by the Lakefield experience. Certainly I've been enriched, and Mary has enriched me tonight, recounting her childhood and her life. So I very much appreciate that.
Glad to do it.
That's where he's still.
And as a token, we have a small token for Mary.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you for being a wonderful audience.
And there's, as usual, oh, yeah, I kind of wing things and I forget things. I'm at that point in age. I have a short memory, a good memory, but very short. I have a good memory, but it's very short. Based on the fact that tonight is our last meeting for this year, on behalf of the board, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. And as usual, there's coffee and cookies and tea in the back. So thank you very much for coming up tonight, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it.